Hi, it's Trevor Carlson, host of the Formula Podcast, where we break down and explore the elements of achievement in world-class performers. Tonight, I get the opportunity to sit down with a friend of mine and a special guest.
My name is Andre Perry. I live here in Iowa City. I work at the Englert Theatre and work on a ton of projects, and we're just going to figure out how all this stuff ticks tonight. Let's do it.
Let's do it. On this episode of The Formula, I have with me the executive director of the Englert Theatre here in Iowa City, Andre Perry. Andre, thanks for taking the time to sit down and chat with us today. Appreciate it.
Of course, thanks.
So you just got done with your big festival for the year, or one of the big ones, Mission Creek. It sounds like it was a pretty good success, at least from the events that I went to. It was a lot of fun. Are you recovered from that yet?
Not quite recovered. I don't know if we ever recover. You're always a little bit scarred, traumatized for life. just one more strike.
From burning out, or just from all the work you had to do?
I think it just takes a lot out of you as you go into the months that directly precede the event.
Yeah.
Particularly January, February, March. You're just putting in so much time. And I think your body goes into this overdrive where it doesn't let you know how much energy you're actually expending.
Yeah.
And so when you get to like a week or so after, you're like, why am I so tired? I'm like just trying to do things, but it's just like finally your body's like, now's the time to recharge and start to get back to normal.
Yeah, it's almost like the pressure's off, so then your body's like, all right, you're done.
Yeah, basically, yeah. That's what's happening to me right now.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this earlier, but you've been doing this for about seven and a half years, right?
Yeah, I've been at the Englert for almost 8 years. I joined there June 2010. I've been working at Mission Creek Festival for 13 years.
Damn.
Mission Creek Festival, Iowa City, actually, for 13 years. And then I was involved in the original Mission Creek Festival in San Francisco for a couple of years before that. Okay. So Mission Creek's been like part of my life for 15 years.
Okay, so Mission Creek started in San Francisco and came here, or is there two different Mission Creeks?
So the original version was in San Francisco's Mission Creek Music and Arts Festival. It was originally in San Francisco when I was living out there, and then it eventually moved to Oakland. It no longer exists. It just like folded in like a totally like cool way, you know, as people just kind of disappeared from the scene. But I was a producer for that event in the early 2000s, and then when I moved to Iowa City, I co-founded the version that we have here.
Okay, so let's take it back a few steps. How did you get into, let's just call it event production?
I did not do it on purpose, or more accurately, I did it on purpose because I was just doing what I wanted to do. But I never had goals of I want to be in event management or event production or experience design. I just, fell into it because when I was living in the Bay Area, I had opportunity to put together some events that, just involved a lot of different artists or folks doing creative activity from around the Bay. Did some warehouse events, helped some buddies out, then, would program some other ones. And then over time, it just became apparent to me that was a really awesome outlet for creative expression, one, and two, throwing events was another way to get your community together in maybe ways that it wouldn't get together naturally. Right. And what I mean by that is just people who are involved in different cultural practices within your communities or different occupations or come from different backgrounds. So you might get, in San Francisco, you might throw a thing that gets like some of the tech people in the room, also get some of the corporate people in the room, also get some of the arts people in the room, the education people in the room, might get some people from some different socioeconomic backgrounds, from some different like ethnic and racial backgrounds. And, while all those people might exist in the same city or the same community at once, they might not always engage each other around an arts or culture event in which they might actually speak to each other, in which they might actually create a connection with each other, in which from there they might actually create friendship and actually become whatever like a thriving community is supposed to be, rather than like segregated by all the different little paths that we run down.
Yeah.
So
you're almost creating organic interaction at like a planned event where you can kind of run in, everybody probably has their circles they normally run around in, like the business people probably have their business scene and the arts people have the art scene, but they don't they probably don't go to a lot of each other's events that often. So this is kind of an opportunity for them to interact in a way outside of their typical environment.
Yeah, anything you can put together to kind of break those walls down, I think, is a positive move. Sometimes a challenging one. Sometimes it makes people uncomfortable, but usually the outcome is that it's like a really important experience for your community if done properly and done the right way.
Yeah.
And done with care. Increasingly so done with care, to just be aware of where people are coming from and how like traumatic and how difficult the world or life can be, even when you're in like the bed of privilege in the United States, right?
Right. When you were talking there, it was kind of reminding me of my experience at DJ Spooky at Witching Hour, because that was like the ultimate crossover of music and science, and it was bizarre because I'm trying to remember what he did. He took like the sound of ice and then he mixed it on a mixing board. Were you there for that show?
I was there for parts of that show. I was there for the prep for that show.
Nice.
I was engaged with Spooky for like 48 hours or whatever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
He seemed like a fascinating guy. And then just seeing how that played out on stage was just like, I don't know. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I don't know. I walked away thinking, I don't even know what was different, but I was just like, I didn't even know that you could do that. And somebody just went on stage and did it for an hour and a half or so. And it was amazing. Like that, it just seems like it takes so much talent and effort to put something like that together. What do you think makes a performance like that like so good, where like you walk away from it and you just kind of almost question your perception of I don't want to use the word reality because I think that's a little too much, but like you question your perception of a lot of things because you're like, if that's possible, what else is possible? So what do you think is the difference between, like, you know, you go to an event and you're like, oh, that was kind of cool, versus like you walk into a Witching Hour event or Mission Creek event and you walk out and you're just like, man, I need to think about some of this stuff a little bit differently, right? Or you have a different idea of what's possible.
Yeah, I think a performance or a presentation that is maybe less didactic and more like an essay in which it is presenting knowledge, presenting creativity, but at the same time always asking questions and peeling back a deeper thread and a deeper layer. Those are the types of events that I think really get us like leaving a hall or leaving a room and just being like, I need to rethink.
Yeah.
You know, because it doesn't give you all the answers. It's just like, here's some science, here's some music, here's just an atmosphere in this room. You guys make of it what you're going to make of it. Like, we've done some work, but we're not going to do everything for you.
Right.
You know, and I think that's when you get that feeling that you're like, where am I?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah, it's hard to explain unless you've actually like been in the room and you're just like, damn, that was awesome. So how do you go about putting together an event or an experience like that? Like, what's that process look like for you? Because I don't imagine it's just like, well, I think I'm going to call DJ Spooky's agent and have him come down, pay him a fee, and they're going to come put on a show and then they're going to leave. Right? I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into it on your end than that.
You know, that one was all the University of Iowa main library and the digital studio. Tom Keegan, who is the head of the digital studio, he had the idea to get Spooky to engage with this Van Allen material for a while, and I remember he initially approached me and my collaborator Chris Wiersma at Mission Creek, and he was like, should we have like Spooky at Mission Creek? You know, that was like years ago. That was like the first question. Yeah. And then I talked with Spooky's agent, and it just kind of developed over time, and it just naturally at the right time happened to be. It just all like avenues pointed to, this is something that should happen at Witching Hour. It speaks to that festival in a way that maybe it would just be another performance at Mission Creek, but it'd be something deeper, and we get a little bit more attention at Witching Hour. Yeah. But I just said that story to really just say, sometimes it just takes time and just to let things unfold. Sometimes you get a really great performance or a really great event that comes together almost like punk style, like DIY show style. You're in someone's basement, like, yo, like this band's in town, let's just throw it, like text all of our friends and we'll have like 40 people here and like a 30 pack of beer. So sometimes like that happens, but sometimes you just have to like let people know that a platform or an opportunity exists for them to come, do something in your town or to like do something at your festival. And over the series of conversations over 6 months, 18 months, 36 months, it might come together. And just having that patience and just knowing that at the right time, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you always want something like that, spooky performance or other things that we do, to happen at the right time.
Yeah.
When it's right for that artist, when it's right for your community, when it's right for your event, because that's when it's going to pop.
Yeah. How do you get that to line up?
Patience.
Patience.
You just got to let some things go sometimes. And it's not like that happened overnight. It's over a lot of just, events not happening or not happening the right way that you just learn to have that patience to be like, yeah, maybe that's going to be 2019.
Right.
It's all good.
Right. I think that's such a good, I think that's a really good piece of advice just for life in general, though, because sometimes it's just not the right time for some things. Or if you try to push it or rush it, then you maybe don't get the result that you desired because you weren't patient and let things kind of unfold. Because it's, I'm thinking back to, I won't share this person's name, but when I got my first press pass as a podcaster, I was like, oh man, I'm going to this guy's press event. I'm going to get in. I'm going to get him to be on my show. It's going to be great. And I'm standing there and I started talking with somebody else that he had brought with them, and I was having a really engaging conversation. And they're like, all right, we're wrapping up the press event. And I'm like, oh, damn. Like, I missed it. I missed my opportunity. So he started to walk out. I'm like, one more question. And I'm not the type to be like, hey, and pitch people on it. I'm usually more like, let's talk. Let's see if it's a good fit. I'm just like, hey, I'm Trevor. I have a little podcast. I'd love to have you on my show and talk about X, Y, Z. And this person just looked at me. And I was like, oh, no. And they were like, you people just follow me around, ask me for interviews all the time, and the answer is no. And I was like,
sorry.
Okay. But it was just, that forcing that moment. And then what actually happened later on, which is kind of funny, is I got lost trying to find where his talk was at. And he comes walking down the sidewalk. And I was just like, hey, do you know where you're going? And he's like, yeah. And then we actually had a really good conversation. I didn't ask him again to be on the show, but it's like, I almost feel like I forced it before, where if I just would have been like, you know what, he's on his way out, he's in a hurry, it'll play out however it plays out, maybe I can get a hold of him later.
Right.
And just been more patient, then maybe, who knows how the result would have turned out, but I think patience is an important lesson for a lot of stuff.
And I definitely screw up still. I'm like, let's do it.
Wait, you make mistakes?
All the time.
Yeah.
And, but just, I think I'm making less of them than maybe I did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
In that regard, in terms of letting the event come together, knowing when to put pressure,
yeah,
when to pursue really intensely artists or speakers or folks who are going to be putting a workshop together for a festival or some other event, and when to just be like, hey, let's just talk when it's time to talk.
Yeah. And I'm sure you don't make the same mistakes that you used to either. Maybe you make new mistakes now. But
yeah.
So when you're approaching, because you've had some top A-list talent come to the Englert over the past few years since I've been familiar with it, and Kevin Smith's coming back for what, a third time?
Second time.
Second time?
Yeah.
I feel like he came back. Wasn't he here before?
He was here. His first time was Mission Creek, 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going this time. I missed it at Mission Creek before, but I'll be there. So how do you approach, because this isn't a huge metropolitan area with a massive audience. So how do you approach these artists or these people that have large followings and convince them to come to the Englert or come to Mission Creek?
Yeah, I think over the years, it's really taking care of artists when they're here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that reputation carries, and I've made mistakes and maybe not taking care of artists in one way or another. And so you really got to keep your track record as clean and as perfect as possible. Again, it's patience. I do know some artists, particularly when I first started programming in Iowa City, working at the mill and early days of Mission Creek when it was super DIY, always talking directly to artists, maybe talk to an agent or a manager every now and then. And so, just build up a nice rapport with some artists, but also just the relationship you have with certain booking agents is really important. Those folks are really, I mean, they're the people who communicate the value of your community, the value of your venues, and just the vibe of where you live to those artists and to the managers who they're trying to just say, hey, you guys should go through Iowa City, whether it's Gabe's, whether it's something at the university or the Englert. It's all relationships. Take care of those artists. And when they come to town, do the work that you need to do to get people there. It doesn't mean that a show needs to sell out every time, but it means the experience needs to be awesome, to the best of your ability. And sometimes it just doesn't work out, and that's okay. But artists remember how they're taken care of. It's like it's a hard life to just be traveling from town to town. Even when you're Kevin Smith, like dude works. Like he
puts in those marathon sessions, because at Mission Creek he did what, like
4 hours.
Jesus.
Like and then he's like up the next morning doing a podcast. You know? And he's on like 4 podcasts. And it's just dude does his work, and so it's like even though he's famous, even though he's been very successful, and I'm sure he's doing okay, it's what he does is work. He wants to talk about culture. He wants to keep pushing culture forward, and I'm sure that like makes him tired. He recently had a heart attack, which is really, really sad, and but he was like back up like the next week. I'm sure to his like doctor's chagrin, but like he's like, no, dude, this is what I do. And so when he comes here, we want to do our best to show him as much love and take care of him while he's here. And that doesn't mean I need to talk to him or anything. It just means our team needs to take care of him, that our community needs to take care of him. And that he leaves just saying, hey, I feel fulfilled and revived from having spent 90, 120, or 180 minutes at the Englert Theatre in Iowa City. And I got a good slice, or maybe he's not supposed to eat pizza at this point, but I got a good salad, from Bread Garden, and I went into Daydreams Comics, and I got like a good espresso from Prairie Lights, and now I'm ready to get on the road and go to the next place.
Yeah, I think he's actually hitting up like 3 places in Iowa, it looks like, which I was kind of surprised by. Yeah,
he's doing like a deep dive in Iowa. He's doing Codfish Hollow, Makokata. He's doing Des Moines. So it's like an Iowa loop.
Yeah, so that's awesome. It's really cool to see like artists when they seem to actually give a shit about the people that they make content for, or they make their art for. That I always find that to be very refreshing. I've been a fan of his for a long time, just because of how he seems to approach. He's like, oh, you watched my movie? He's like, cool. I'm only supposed to be here an hour, but I'm gonna give you 3.
Right.
So. There's a lot of people, I mean, especially in Iowa City, it seems like there's always like a new festival or a new event or something popping up. And I'm sure you get asked a lot for advice on like, hey, how do I think I've asked you this. So I know for sure, but what advice do you give to someone who's looking to get something new off the ground?
Just try to be as honest as possible, be a good community member. I remember when I was like pretty young and starting off and doing stuff, and now I'm not like super old, but I'm not like pretty young anymore. And so it's like good to be in that position and just be able to like share as much honesty and just as much knowledge. I'm just like, share all the knowledge. You want to look at our books, look at our books. I don't care. I want you to do better than we're doing. The only reason like you exist right now is to do work that people can make better later on. So I try to be as open as possible, try to be as honest as possible, and even though I'm probably overbearing sometimes, I'm definitely overbearing sometimes, I try to like actively be like not overbearing so people can just do their vision. I want to see your vision. Like, I've got 2 days off, let me jump into the event that you're doing. I love going to other people's events in the area that we live in, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, wherever. I love going to events. It doesn't even have to be like stuff I'm into. It's just like going to it and feeling it and taking notes on how people are being really successful and bringing community together. I'm like way into that.
Have you been to any of the Cedar Valley House concerts yet?
I haven't been to the Cedar Valley House concerts.
You gotta go.
I know all about them, and house concerts were a really essential part of my life post-college and pre-moving to Iowa City when I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area. I had a really good friend who ran a place called Fort Oregon, which was on Oregon Street in Berkeley, California, and is just an amazing house concert venue. Like just crazy shows went in through there. Like Lou Barlow from Sebadoh played there. Like the Microphones or Mount Airy played there, and then like just every like Bay Area like band from like the post-punk people to the folk people, like just to the electronic folk. Just everyone was through there, and so I would just see so many shows in that space, and it was just like brought me back to life.
So there's every time I bring up that I'm friends with you or that I was doing this with you, people are always like, yeah, Andre's like this great talent for Iowa City. He could be anywhere. Why do you choose to stay in Iowa City versus like going back to San Francisco or any other place that has, a little larger market for events?
Sure. Got a couple answers. I mean, one is it's kind of fucked everywhere. So you might as well just stay where you are, right?
All right.
And what I mean by that is Iowa City's, for all the things that we love, or the Iowa City, ICR, Iowa City area, for all the things that we love here, there's some extreme challenges. It's like a tough place to be a person of color, right? And it's getting like tougher. And if you're a person of color and you don't have like economic means, it's like really, really, really bad. And if you're white and you don't have economic means, it's also like really bad. Mm-hmm. And we're definitely starting to probably see a split between people who can afford to even live, particularly in Iowa City, and it doesn't seem that bad right now, but like give it another 10 years and it could be like really, really, really bad. There's a lot of pride in the education system of Iowa. And so you think about from like K to 12, and people are like, yeah, the schools are really good here, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, but the schools, particularly in Iowa City, are not advancing. The education is like still solid, but they're not at an innovative level that are going to prepare students to like live both effective and like nourishing lives. And so like they're falling apart. And again, it's like you look at them now, you're like, it's like okay, but they're not like crumbling. But you like fast forward 10 years, that could be a problem. You think about higher education and like the total, it's not just the defunding of like say the University of Iowa or Iowa State. That's part of it, but that's like one part of the problem is that there's not enough funds to like for the universities to excel, nor are the universities, they have yet to take action, or the University of Iowa has yet to take action where it can embrace, it could be a leader in what higher education looks like. They're at this crossroads, and if they jump, they could go and be like one of the best educational, institutions ever in the United States. And if they don't jump and they stay in stasis, it's going to fall apart. It's going to defund it. It's going to slowly melt away and die. Those are just some of the problems. So you think about that, but like it's not like Iowa City is the only town. It's like a small town in Iowa. It's also happening in Chicago. It's also happening in the Bay Area. It's also happening in New York. It's also happening in D.C. It's also happening in other college towns, other Big Ten towns. It's happening in Madison, Wisconsin. So while there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of positive things that are happening here that I'm certainly taking advantage of, and I'm privileged enough to like plug into, there are a lot of things that will make us sad to be part of this community if we don't like address them and make the right decisions. Right. And so why stay here? Well, if I leave and go somewhere else, which I could like tomorrow or in 10 years, I'm going to be doing the same work. Wherever I can fit into that community, I got to find a way to help improve the situation. And the situation is not equally great or equally terrible wherever you go, but there are a lot of the same versions of problems are happening, or the same types of problems are happening. It's really like a national issue. I mean, also global, but like really America just like needs to like step up. I think initially you're asking like why would you stay here and do work here? For me, Iowa City, and although I don't live there, I think Cedar Rapids are great places to create and make stuff, whether you're in the arts or in, working on a business or just whatever your project is. Yeah. And they're great places to get work done. I came here to study at the university for writing at the nonfiction writing program. And like it was just a place to like read books, learn from other authors, write your work, have a great community of feedback, have great conversations, and do more work, and then refine and repeat and like chisel down. Like it's just like there aren't that many communities where you can just like knock out work and also have like enough of like an energy in the community that there's also creative conversation going on.
Right.
And I think certain parts of Cedar Rapids are really encouraging that. I think Iowa City in general, just like it's just one of the natural states of being of what Iowa City is.
Yeah.
And so I'm really attracted to communities that are like that. That keeps me alive.
Right.
In some form.
And it seems like every time I come back to Iowa City, I'm always like happy to be back because it just has like a different feel to it than. I mean, Cedar Rapids is a cool place and there's a lot going on, but it just feels like everything, like the arts, the business scene, the downtown area, all of that is just like concentrated. And then I think it helps with like the Ped Mall and having everything walkable too. So it's got like it's got a weird environment. It's kind of like Iowa's version of Boulder, or maybe maybe Boulder is Colorado's version of Iowa City. I don't know.
It's college town.
Right. Yeah. So one of the conversations we were having earlier was about burnout, right? So you're just coming off of Mission Creek, and we were kind of exchanging some stories about what it's like to push yourself to kind of that limit and having your body kind of say like, well, maybe it's time for a timeout. What do you do to recover once you hit that point?
Honestly, I should just go on vacation. I should just go to like, I don't even know where. I don't know, like Palm Springs for like a week. I'd probably be fine. I'd probably come back at 120%
Right.
if I did that. I don't know why I don't do that because I have so much work. My partner's like, I haven't seen you for like a week. Your daughter doesn't know who you are. And so like, I feel like I gotta just be like a good like husband and father. And then I gotta like steward, the work that I'm doing. So, I mean, the thing I should do is leave for like 4 days. Even 3 nights would be amazing, and sit by a pool, drink water, like pay absurd amounts of money for massages and like, I don't know, cleanses.
Yeah.
Maybe have a cocktail on the 3rd day and then get on a plane and fly back to Iowa City. I'd be like, all right, let's do this.
All right, ready to rock and roll again.
Instead, I just try to get as much sleep as I can, take it easy. I'm reading books again, just kicking it with my partner and kicking it with my daughter in the mornings. And so all that stuff is like really regenerative and like it just helps me get back on my feet as well. So, I came out of this festival just so excited. I would say it's probably one of the best festivals that we've ever done. We hit a lot of marks that we've been trying to hit, and I feel inspired to do more work, and I feel like there's so much more work in our community to do in terms of getting people on the same page, in terms of getting people in the same room, which I guess is just like one of my missions, just get people in the same room in an environment that's going to allow them to experience and drop their guard a little bit and connect with each other. So there's just like so much to do, and the experience of Mission Creek 2018 is allowing me to want to do that for I don't know for how much longer. So we're already working on Witching Hour 2018. Got a couple big sessions coming up in the next couple weeks of like pushing that forward, and other projects in the Englert, like our new Wavelength series, which is all about arts education, both for kids and students as well as just us as adults as lifelong learners. So getting that program pushed forward in the right way with all the partners that we're working with. I just don't want to stop. So I should be like in Palm Springs, but I'm just like back to just working, just calling up collaborators and just saying, let's get down to business.
Yeah. What do you think I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about your show, the house concerts you saw in San Francisco. What do you think the best show or concert you've been to is?
Ever?
Like, is there one that just stands out where you're like, that was awesome?
Ones.
I feel like that's a tough question, but is there one that like you were like, man, I walked out of there and I just felt like inspired, or I felt like I had to do something?
Yeah, there are like a million of those, but for some reason I'll never forget this was the one time not the one time, but the first time I saw Sigur Rós at Coachella in 2001. It had just been like a really long day. It was back when Coachella was just a singular day, and caught them in a tent, and it was like their first U.S. tour, I think, or an early U.S. tour. It's off the second record, the one that blew up and kind of got them to prominence. And just walking into this tent and just seeing them playing. They had this string quartet with them. They had this like Icelandic dude just like reciting like, I don't know, like fairy poems or something. I don't know. It was like, it was just like mind blowing. It was just so not of this world. And like for anyone who like ever listened to like any sort of like psychedelic music, you know, or any sort of like post-rock, like it was just like, you were like in the moment in which it was being created, and you knew that like the other like 4,000 people or however many people fit in that tent were just like being totally just mesmerized. And I think we just like come off of seeing like, I don't know, like Paul Oakenfold or something like ridiculous. And we just like walked into that and you're like, whoa. I think it was Jane's Addiction. We were going from Jane's Addiction to Paul Oakenfold.
Yeah.
And then we went into this tent to see Sigur Rós. That story alone explains how ridiculous my tastes were in 2001. I was watching Jane's Addiction to go see Paul Oakenfold for that. So like,
It's a little bit of a jump.
But I'm not gonna scratch that from the record. I did like I've got a lot of respect for old school Jane's Addiction, and I used to see a lot of DJs.
Yeah. Do you think that you brought some of that taste where you kind of jump between genres? I mean, to like Mission Creek and Witching Hour. I feel like I already know the answer since I've been to them and seen some of the variety of shows, but.
Yeah, man, that's just how I grew up, man. I grew up in D.C. I mean, I had an older brother, which helps, you know, just because you get like music early. And so we listened to a ton of rap. I grew up like when rap was just like blowing up. Mm-hmm. You know, when I was like in high school, it was like that golden age, like 90s hip hop. Crazy things happening in East Coast hip hop, just like listening to like Mobb Deep, Wu-Tang, you know, like super deep into Ghostface, Raekwon, you know, Nas. I remember when Illmatic came out, but at the same time, I remember buying the CD for the Chronic when Chronic came out, and like following everything that like Dre was doing after like in, you know, like middle school and elementary school, listening to NWA, and just like understanding just the worlds that those guys were creating. Just creatively was like super influential, and they were bringing in, even though, you know, it came under the banner of rap, they were just bringing in so many different sounds. RZA, the production was like mind blowing. What Havoc was doing on Mobb Deep Records, the worlds that they were creating, just like as on a narrative, you know, like stage. Like, I mean, Mobb Deep's second album, The Infamous, is just like, that's like, I like put that next to like listening to early Velvet Underground or something. Like, just like, it's got the same sort of way, or probably even more like 70s era, like Lou Reed. It's just like the way that they're able to capture a scene in a place and a time that they are or are not connected to, just because they understand New York or they understand Queensbridge the way that, you know, Lou Reed understood certain parts of Manhattan. Like, it's just like, that's amazing. So that stuff was like very influential. And at the same time, there was just like crazy like alternative rock happening, you know, like a lot of kids I remember buying like Nevermind and just like listening to that for the first time after seeing the video for Smells Like Teen Spirit on MTV, and just be like, whoa, like I'm way into that. Didn't even know about Bleach, you know, but found out about that later. And then, you know, I remember seeing on 120 Minutes Bullet in the Head by Rage Against the Machine. I was like, whoa. I was like, I got to get that. Yeah. Went to the record store, got first Rage album, and I mean, there was just like so much crazy music happening. And then when I was in college, I like did a semester in England, and I'd heard like, you know, like some of their songs, but like one of my friends was like, dude, have you listened to Blur? And I was like, no. And like, you know, like obviously everyone knows song number 2, but like got into Blur, and is when that album came out, got into their old stuff, got all this like Europeans or like, you know, UK like Britpop, and then really started getting into like beats, like electronic music, both European, and then getting into like Detroit and like Chicago. It's just like, I mean, music is always popping. Yeah. And it was just like particularly popping when I grew up. I know a lot of people are like, yo, the 70s were popping or the 60s were popping. They were, but like it was like super popping in like the 90s and early 2000s. Mm-hmm. I mean, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, just the advent of electronic music and how that affected so many types of music. Yeah. And then just that split where like people went from like punk to like alternative rock. Yeah. It's just like really interesting. And, you know, now we're going through another phase, whatever it is.
Yeah, it sounds way different now than it was then. I mean, now everything's digital. People don't usually like. There's not like the whole like, oh, that new album dropped today. Well, unless I think J. Cole's new album is dropping. I keep hearing about it. I don't know anything about it, but you know, it's not often you hear about people coming out with a new album though. You're just like, oh yeah, they got a new track on Spotify. You're like, oh yeah, let me download that. And
You got to make it part of your day. E40 and Be Legit dropped a record this week.
oh man,
Like, you know, you just got to keep checking the waves.
I didn't even know those guys were still around.
E40 is really prolific.
Yeah,
And, you know, that's, speaking about artists, like that's someone who just like makes music.
yeah,
And like a lot of it's like pretty good.
right.
And he's like 50. You know, and he's been making music since he was like 20 or whatever.
Yeah. And you guys just had Wyclef here, right?
Yeah, Wyclef was in March
Yeah.
at the Englert.
Yeah, is he older too?
Wyclef's got to be like 50, 45,
Yeah.
50.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I feel like he's been doing it for a long time as well.
Yeah, he's probably been around for 25 years.
It's crazy how long those guys can keep making music for though. It just must be something that they have a lot of passion in, or they just, I don't know. It's cool to see them be able to stick around and stay relevant for that long too. You know?
Yeah, Ghostface Killer played Mission Creek Festival last year in 2017, and it was awesome. And I went down the dressing room afterwards, which I don't do that frequently. And I was just, I mean, this is like a hero. And I was just like, someone was like, hey, like, this is like one of the guys who works for the festival. I was like, cool. And he's like, what's up, man? And I was just like, just thank you for like making art. And he was like, looked at me and he was like, that's what I do. I make art. Like, I just like make these tracks and I'm going to keep doing it.
Damn.
Keep supporting. Much love. And I was like, dope. I'm out. I will keep supporting.
That's like
that's
epic. Where he's just like, yeah,
that's what
I
he
do.
does. You know, like he just like they make track. He is there to rap. He's there to advance lyricism.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So let's say that there's someone out there that maybe wants to make art or make a festival or something like that, and maybe they're facing some challenges about doing something authentic or doing something that might be a little bit different. What would you tell them?
As entrepreneurs often say, they're always talking about like the minimum viable product. Mm-hmm. You know, I think with a festival or an event, just do something and keep it affordable for you. And you can afford to do it and not go into like crazy financial ruin or anything. Just do it, because you learn so much from just like getting something out there and then getting another thing out there. Because if you're really into it, you're going to keep refining, or you'll just find like, hey, maybe that wasn't the right thing and I need to go back to the drawing board. Yeah. But at least you did it once, you know? Obviously have a plan and have a good team, whether it's a team of 2 or a team of 10, but like have a good team, have an idea you believe in, and just try to get it out there once, you know, and go from there. You know, it's like the type of thing where you just do it once and it just happened once. You're like, cool. We're not doing that again, but we had a good time. I was just reading today. Sigur Rós put on this festival in Iceland. I'm not sure if it was in Reykjavik, but I think it was. They put on this festival, and I think they were playing it. Like Kevin Shields played it. Like they just got like all these like dope artists to play it, and I guess it like lost a bunch of money, which they could afford because they're Sigur Rós. And they were just like, you know, it's not happening again, or at least as far as we know, it's not happening again. But I'm sure everyone who went to Sigur Rós's festival in Reykjavik was like, that was the jam. Like, I'm sure people were just like on a different level, you know, at their festival. And, you know, they had the resources to do it. That's not the festival I would do, because I wouldn't be able to afford it. But like, if I can do my version with my like $2,500 and not my like $2.5 million or whatever it cost them to do it, then let me just do my $2,500 version. And if there was enough there to grow on it, I'll grow on it. If not, hey, I created. Yeah. We did a community thing. I'll move to the next project. Yeah, and I think you make a really good point. Is I feel like that a lot of, especially for me when I was like 24 to 27 or so, I just felt like, you know, you graduated college. Well, I didn't actually graduate, I dropped out. But I dropped out of college. Most other people graduate. I was doing startup stuff, so
I took that path. I've seen this happen a lot of times too, and I find it really interesting is they like drop out, or not drop out, sorry, they graduate. Most people graduate. And then they're like, okay, well, I don't know what I want to do. So then they just like get a job and then they don't do anything. Well, I don't know, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this. And they don't do any of them. But the point you made was just like, just go do it. If it goes bad, you don't have to do it again.
Right.
If it goes well, hey, that's great. You can do it again. And I think that applies to jobs and a lot of other things too, like making art, making festivals, starting a business. Like just give it a shot and see what happens. You might hate it, but you don't know unless you try it.
I was talking to a friend today who has had a business that was been quite successful for the last 11 years. Mm-hmm. And they just decided to close it down this week for various reasons. And it wasn't like there was like a major crash that it was falling apart. They had to go into bankruptcy or anything. They just saw the market changing, and they knew that in like 3 or 4 years, it wasn't going to make sense to be in it, and that there were other people coming into the market. So they just kind of like sold off their assets at a very low cost to those other people and said, "You're already going this direction, just go for it." And they were just so calm about it.
Yeah.
I was like, "How long did you do that?" They're like, 11 years. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Just finding the next good thing." I was like, that's all I needed today. Yeah. Just find that next good thing. I know not everyone's like that lucky and they're older. And so like, they've got a little bit of a support system, but they're just like, do a good thing and don't be afraid to do the next good thing.
Yeah. That should be on a poster somewhere, I feel like, because whether it's fear or, fear of change, fear of it not working out, fear of it being worse than where you are now. I mean, I know personally I've been stuck in that place where like, I really kind of want to try this thing, but I'm okay where I'm at now.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what's going to happen. Or, you don't know if it's the next, I don't know. You don't know if it's the next good thing until you try, so. I'm going to have to think about that one more later because that's, I don't know if you realize that that's exceptional advice from whoever said that to you. Like even with festivals and stuff like that, find the next good thing. Like whether that's, and you said this year was one of the best years you've had. So how can you find the next good thing for 2019?
I don't know yet, but we will.
Yeah, I know. I have faith. I'll definitely be back next year for it. So I think that kind of wraps up really the first part of the interview. We talked a lot about festivals, music, how to get started, how to, do your MVP of a festival. So quick question for you is like, what do you try to do on a daily basis that you feel like gives you either an edge on your day or you feel like your day was a win?
Try to write. And if I can't write, I read. If I can't read, I listen.
What do you try to write?
I'm always working on something.
Fiction, nonfiction, journaling? What do you?
Generally essays.
Essays?
Yeah.
Is there a specific topic that you write about?
No.
Just
at large.
Yeah. Is it just kind of a stream of conscious type thing?
No, I'm usually trying to put things together, and it'll start off vague, and then over the course of months, the ideas will come together.
Yeah. Kind of the rule of shitty first drafts.
Just like one big draft that keeps on getting
bigger,
changed. It takes a while to get that first full draft.
Yeah.
Several months, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months.
Yeah.
But just that practice is good. And if I can't do that, got to read something. If I can't do that, got to listen to something.
Do you feel like it makes a big difference when you do that versus when you don't?
100%.
What do you think the most impactful book that you've read is?
Notes of a Native Son, James Baldwin.
Why?
Shit is real.
Yeah. I haven't read it, but I'm going to have to add that to I think I say that every time someone says a book that I haven't read before when they're on the show. I'm like, I'm going to have to add that to my list. But I have heard that one recommended a few times. What stood out for you in it?
his understanding of the cultural failures of American life during his period in the 20th century and how those persist into this century.
Yeah. I feel like that's something that's pretty relevant right now that I could probably use reading, and maybe a few other people.
It's relevant 100 years ago.
All right. So I feel like that wraps up most of our interview. So I typically just ask one last question for everyone that's here, everyone that I'm interviewing. And that is really a twofold question. And that's like, what message would you like to leave the audience? And then some type of inspirational message, like you can do whatever you want and then come to my event.
I think the message I would leave is twofold. One, let us collectively try to be more honest about what's going on in our world, in our personal lives, and let us commit ourselves to projects that might make things better for both ourselves and our communities around us. Sometimes we'll fail at that, myself included, but let's keep trying.
Hey, thanks for checking out the Englert. We hope you can stop by for some of our amazing events this fall. We have Witching Hour Festival is going to drop October 12th to 13th here in downtown Iowa City. And then, of course, in the spring, we've got Mission Creek Festival 2019. But before, during, and around all those special festival events, we've got some other crazy things that are going to be happening. You can go to our website, www.englert.org, and see what works for you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for this show. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Trevor Carlson, and I appreciate you taking the time to stop by, and whether it's viewing our episodes or listening to our podcast or reading our blog posts, all of you guys really help keep this show going. So I much appreciate your time and attention, and hopefully we provided a little bit of value for you. Now, if you're interested and you think you might enjoy getting some blog posts, emails, other podcasts, guides, any of that sort of thing sent to your inbox every week, go ahead and head over to theformulapodcast.com and sign up for our email list today. That's a wrap for this week's show. Thanks again, everyone, for stopping by, and I look forward to you tuning in next time.